This is the Martial Arts Lifestyle Podcast, where we have conversations with everyday martial artists about their histories and how martial arts influence their daily lives. You are listening to the abbreviated version of this podcast, which is the first 20 minutes or so of the show. Please consider supporting the show by subscribing on our Patreon page, www.patreon.com/MALMAG, and for about the price of one coffee shop coffee per month, you can get access to 4 new podcasts each month, 1 week before their YouTube release dates. You also have access to all of our existing shows, which at this point is about 100 hours of shows for you to enjoy. Individual shows can be purchased at our Gumroad page. That is malmag.gumroad.com. If you're looking for some sticks for FMA, some cool t-shirts, or even a course on Dos Manos, have a stop by martialartslifestylemagazine.com and click on the store tab or on the courses tab for that course. This week I connect to New York on Zoom and I talk with a member of my Greater Inosanto family, KRISTEN Cabildo. We talk about how she got involved in martial arts, discovering her Filipino roots through her study of Filipino martial arts, and her larger project, Chrysalis Kali, and much more. Sit back and enjoy. Welcome to the Martial Arts Lifestyle Podcast, and today I'm connecting to New York, and I am talking with a young lady that I met in the Inosanto program years ago. It's kind of hard for me to tell the passage of time since we don't really get seasonal change in California. It's hard for me. Could be 5 years, could be 10 years, could be 3 years. I'm not exactly sure, but familiar face that I've seen around, and she's doing all kinds of really cool stuff that I've been looking forward to talking to her about, as well as her origin story. Please welcome KRISTEN Cabildo to the show.
Thank you so much, Steve and Tim. I'm excited to be here. Just awesome that you're doing this and you're, learning about all of these instructors all over the country and the world. So I'm just really honored to, participate. So thank you for inviting me.
Well, I appreciate you being here. I tell you what, this has probably been one of the funnest projects I've ever done. Getting to just sit. I mean, I've always had a gift to talk. So says my parents, I guess. And so it's just been great, to kind of sit and chat with about 52 people a year, because I put these things out once a week. So
wow.
Yeah, we're going into next year will be the 3rd year. So we're coming up on show 100 here pretty soon, which is kind of cool.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you.
Again, it's just great to, learn about people's individual stories and how they got into martial arts, because I think it's very, different and just very interesting to see, get a peep into people's lives. So it's really great.
Indeed. And then I always hopefully inspiring for people that, because, as humans, we're all going through different things. And it seems like a lot of times when you're going through stuff, you feel like you're the only one or you're by yourself. And then if you start hearing, oh, wait, this person went through it, this is how maybe they solved it. And it gives you some ideas, hopefully some inspiration, hopefully some hope, and also just not that feeling of isolation, which kind of is really tough for people, I think.
Agreed.
Cool. Well, let's find out how you got started in martial arts. What's your story here? When, how, who, why, all that good stuff.
Yeah, so I always wanted to get involved in martial arts, but I grew up in the 80s in New Jersey, and, there wasn't really many opportunities to train. I was involved in dance, but essentially, I wanted to learn how to defend myself because there was a kind of something that happened in my family. One of my titas was a survivor of violence. So I kind of grew up with a lot of messages, that to be a woman was unsafe, to be a Filipino woman, to be small, to be to travel the world, that was unsafe. So I kind of had aspirations to learn how to defend myself, but didn't really have many opportunities, to learn martial arts when I was in elementary school or high school. So I made it a commitment that when I went to college, that I would learn self-defense. So I went to Boston University, but I joined the Kung Fu Club, which was my introduction to martial arts, and was a great introduction, but I learned that I couldn't really defend myself, at least in learning, traditional martial arts. I was learning like cat stance and monkey stance and all these kind of beautiful
Oh no! So you're telling me the song that we all know live? Not only were they not all kung fu fighting, but they weren't expert timing and everything else.
Right. I mean, I loved it, and it really, translated well with my dance background. But I didn't really feel confident, learning that, or that I could defend myself, in any type of, street situation or self-defense situation. So during my junior year of college, I actually did study abroad in the Philippines, and that's when I discovered Filipino martial arts. And
Wow.
yeah, and so I went. I was at the University of the Philippines in Quezon City, and I was there for 6 weeks, and I got to kind of join the local school Arnis club. And I was just like,
Oh,
how come I never knew anything about Filipino martial arts? And, in college, I studied religion and anthropology, and I was learning about all these other cultures except my own. And, being
right.
Filipino American, I'm biracial. My father didn't teach me Tagalog. I just knew about Filipino culture through the food. And so learning about Filipino martial arts and then learning how very practical it was for self-defense. I felt really connected to learning more about it when I came back to the United States. And so after I graduated Boston University, I found a school in New York City, and I was like, I have to find Filipino martial arts. I found Filipino martial arts, Jeet Kune Do, and it became a way for me to learn more about my culture, to reconnect in a meaningful way, and then to also feel safer. So that's kind of how I got started. So no, again, my father didn't even know about Filipino martial arts. He knew about boxing. He was exposed to karate, growing up in Manila, but um, it was, really a way for me to find a meaningful way to learn more about Filipino history and to reconnect with my culture, um, and then to feel safer, essentially. So it helped me to, combat all these narratives I grew up with, being a woman wasn't safe. And so kind of, helped me develop more self-confidence. And I was able to travel the world, and yeah, long story short.
No, no, that's really cool. And I mean, there's a lot of stuff in there that we can talk about. And honestly, what's interesting is you bringing up the idea of, well, growing up in the 1980s, so did I. I mean, that's when everything from sixth grade through high school was the 1980s for me. And what's funny is as Gen X, we want to nostalgically look back, oh, how safe of a time it was. Statistically, hell no, it was not, right? It's safer now statistically than it was then. And now, fortunately, I guess it depends on where your politics land. If you're if you're not, if you're a little bit more toward the other side, you may say, well, it's not a good idea that all these people are speaking up now. But I think it's better because at least we know the realities for people, and we're seeing women are expressing today how unsafe they do feel with a lot of things, and I think that's just important. It's important for us as a society to know, especially us as men, to know that maybe our behavior is creating, uh, as a whole, I'm not saying every guy, of course. I mean, I kind of had this weird thing where I grew up in a family, we were all boys in my generation. So myself, I was kind of an only child. I had a half brother, same dad, different mom. And then I had four cousins. We were all boys. But my mom, and my aunt were very strong female personalities. So there was a lot of respect for women, a lot of just, we didn't play type A macho guys. It just was not going to fly because, mom or aunt would, knock you down. My mom was tall. That's where I got my height. My aunt was like 5'2". She was still a badass. So, there just wasn't going to be a lot of that. But I never realized that type of thing until I got asked by Daniel Park from the Academy a few years ago he was doing some kind of charity thing, self-defense. He wanted me to come and teach something for, I think, 2 hours. And I said, sure. So I went, and just on a lark, I just kind of asked the group, I said, when's the last time you felt like you really needed to physically defend yourself? And all the guys sat and thought, well, maybe 2 years ago, 4 years. Every female had said within the last 48 hours. And it kind of blew my mind. I'm like, oh, wait, what? And so that sent me like, okay, there's a whole world here that I'm not understanding. And it made me step into that. to look at it, to go, you know what, I'm not an effective self-defense teacher for this group if I didn't even know that. So there you go.
Yeah, well, I appreciate your that story, and I think that's testament to what a lot of women have felt, and um, also just not having the access though, or feeling like they
Right.
can like join a martial arts school. It's kind of very there's like it depends now. I think it's changing, right? But the sport aspect, or there's like a machismo, or a very kind of masculine dominated. It's a masculine dominated sport and art.
Sure,
Um,
with particular ones, for sure, absolutely, yeah.
yes, yeah, yeah. And again, I feel like it's changing so much in the past.
Yeah.
Since I started, but I definitely felt when I first started that I had to prove myself, that I had to prove that I deserved to be there. But honestly, my wanting to defend myself was a lot stronger than I felt like the culture of the sport. I wanted to learn how
Right.
to defend myself. So I was like, I was going to be there, unless somebody kicked me out, right? Because I also could, because I wanted to, overcome that fear. So my
Yeah.
desire to train was really, really strong. But yeah, that is a culture that, women, I know when I went to school for social work, that was going to be my focus, was violence against women, just
Oh,
because of
wow.
my own, again, feeling like afraid growing up, and, wanting to, be able to understand kind of the larger, like social, cultural, um, what we were kind of living in, right? And,
Hmm.
I did find that, I was going to go into the domestic violence work, but being a clinical social worker and having people talk things out, I realized, I was like, oh, this is not for me. Like, I actually want to help people learn how to defend themselves, but
Right.
also to understand the larger context of, why, um, we're kind of living in society, and how can we, how can women feel empowered, that kind of thing. So,
Wow. Yeah, and
yeah.
it's interesting to kind of get that insight into your feelings on that, because I've seen you hit the pads I don't know how many times, and the last thing I would think is that you were someone who was concerned about defending themselves, because I don't want to get on the other end of your kicks and punches unless I'm holding pads, then I'm cool with it. But to just take one, I'm like, I'm gonna get out of the way of that. So in the 1980s, when you were first getting interested, and you said lack of access, was that because there wasn't a lot of martial arts schools around where you were, or the ones that were there, just the vibe wasn't good for you? Because I
I
know,
mean,
for instance, I started in '82. There was in the school I was in, there was a lot of people. There was probably at least 100 students all the way around, if not more. And we trained professional kickboxers at the time, which was PKA. And we had a female, well, it was my instructor's wife, but she was ranked #1 in the world. She had had 5 fights at the time, knocked the Canadian champion out or something in her previous fight from the time I stepped in there. And that's the first person I had to spar with as a 12-year-old. And she'd hit me with a cross right in the chest. And I'm like, okay, this is real stuff, right? And we had, I want to say, well, see, their daughter was there. She was a little younger than me, so she was like 8 or 9. And then there was, I think, 2 or 3 other women, and that was it. And they were all great and cool, but you could see definitely the breakdown of the demographic was 90% men.
yeah,
And
I
now
mean,
at the academy, it's at least 50% women, at least
yeah, yeah,
in the
no, it's
kids'
been
class, I
amazing to
should say.
see.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was born in '83. So, growing up in New Jersey, I don't even remember like through elementary school, there weren't any martial arts schools. And it also just wasn't
Okay.
something that was like, offered or like talked about. My parents put me in dance. That's what you did with
Oh,
girls, little girls,
well, of course.
And I really appreciated that, that experience, because I think the body awareness and the dance background gave me the ability to learn martial arts kind of
Oh, heck
easier
yeah.
and quicker. Um, but yeah, it wasn't like, I had boy cousins growing up, so I was a bit of a tomboy in general. But yeah, there just wasn't like any like encouragement or
Gotcha.
um and growing up in New Jersey, it wasn't like I was in the boonies or anything like that. It
Right,
just like
exactly.
wasn't
Yeah.
available. So that's why when I was like, when I get to college, I know there's going to be more opportunity. And I, made a commitment to be like, oh, this is what I really, really want to do. So, um, and I do think there were maybe like a quarter or a third of the group, was women, in the Kung Fu Club. But yeah, I felt like I was an outlier. Like I was so
Mm.
excited to learn martial arts, and my friends were like partying or like doing other types of activities. Uh, but I got kind of got into it and really felt the benefits of feeling like power in my body. So
Right.
the striking and again, I love to talk about also like the feeling like you're in the zone. So all of those
Yeah.
neurochemicals and endorphins, like I felt those things very early on in starting martial arts. So not only did I feel like, oh, I can feel powerful. I'm a small woman, and I've been told by society, that that I should be scared all the time by people bigger, but I actually can feel how I can generate power when I start to hit things. And that was
Right.
started to change my narrative around, well, I'm not a victim, like I don't have to be one. And then also the feeling of being in the zone is also kind of like self-rewarding, right? So then you're getting the benefits of like, oh, I feel like I'm in the flow, like I'm getting all these endorphins, like I want to work out or I want to train and practice. So yeah, I think those are the things that I encourage when I work with women now and my students now. I'm like, oh, these are the things that you're going to start to feel. And it's through that experience that they feel those things that they're like, oh, I get it. Now I don't have to be afraid of doing martial arts or afraid of, the power that's in my body. They're like getting an actual experience of it. And that's, I think, what keeps them coming back, right? And that's the new thing. I think for our generation now, women now are like, oh, this is what really feels good. So it's an
Right.
embodied sense of power. I think I might have
Yeah.
gotten off on a tangent there, but
No,
yeah.
no, no, you're correct. And you know what? That's basically our version of the runner's high. So we need to kind of come up with
Exactly.
our own term for that, right? So it's like a drug high, but in a good way, in a positive, healthy way. And no, I know exactly what you're talking about, and it's what's kept me coming back to this thing for 40 years now. Is that's where I found my enjoyment was because of that. It's such the weirdest combination of things for me. Like I'd done team sports, and team sports was okay. I enjoyed it, but there's something about team sports where there's this constant drive. Like, okay, if we win, we're high. If we lose, we're low. And I'm like, well, okay, did we have fun at any point with any of this, right? So at least with the martial arts stuff, we have a community. So it is like a team sport in a way because you do have
Right.
the encouragement of the group around you, but there's way more victories than there are losses, in my opinion, as far as the mentality of it. At least I hope, anyway, if the environment's correct. So that's what's always brought me back to it, and kept me in it. So I can see if you're looking to empower women and go from, if you've been programmed, like you said, you have, which I can see. This is not a hard thing to look at social constructs and see the idea that you've been taught, oh, be afraid, this is bad things happening. Bad things
Right.
happen all over. It just doesn't mean you have to put up with it.
Exactly. Yeah. And the it's different, with regards to like, we always think about our mental beliefs, and you can think, okay, I believe, that I'm powerless, or I believe X, Y, and Z. But when you have an experience, a physical embodied experience of feeling something different, like when you're striking the pads,
Right.
right, that actually changes the belief. So I think, we live in a society that's very much like cerebral, right, which is like
Yeah.
the frontal cortex. But when we're in our bodies in a new and different way, and I'm only going to speak with regards to like my own experience, and just women have felt disconnected from our bodies and felt
Hmm.
shame around our bodies, or again like that we're not strong, or that we can't defend ourselves, we have to rely on other people or whatever. Like when you experience martial arts in this way, it really changes the belief from like almost like a visceral level. um, and so that's why I love, having people hit the pads and like feeling, and also feeling their growth. Like they might feel uncoordinated and be
Yeah.
like, what's happening? But if you're able to like positively have them keep working at that, right, from an encouraging perspective, rather than like, I grew up in a kind of like with my old martial art teachers, like drill sergeant which
Yeah.
pushed me. But I'm learning that, the communities that I'm working with, we have to speak differently, and
Right.
it's a way that I actually wish that I was coached. So,
Yeah.
um, so we're also then training how we talk to ourselves. Like,
Right.
oh, I wasn't good at this today, but I have a growth mindset, and I know that it doesn't mean that I'm a failure. Like it means that I can get better, through
Right.
perseverance and like, so we learn how to coach ourselves differently. And then there's like a physical experience of just, like it comes from being in our bodies in a different way. And I mean, and then because I teach, Philippine women and the FilipinX community, Filipino martial arts. So now they're getting this experience of their bodies that feels empowering, but then it's something that has to do with our culture and our heritage. So now there's like an even deeper connection, which makes so much difference in, I think my generation that felt kind of disconnected from our culture and, growing up, not feeling Filipino enough. Now we're like, oh, we're
Right.
practicing a warrior art. Again, getting off tangent a little bit. I could talk
No,
forever
not really, because
about
that's
this.
something I definitely want to talk to you about. That's like the
Yeah.
coolest thing. I love what you're doing there, and I love keeping up with that. Because I think I've always been kind of one of these junkies on history, culture, humanities, that sort of thing. So it's to me it's just fascinating because I mean I come from a middle of the country white family, which means we have no identity really. So we take on, well, it's not in a bad way. It just means that we take on anything that we like, we think is cool. We're like, oh, you want to have fondue on Christmas Eve? Yeah, let's have fondue on Christmas Eve. So it kind of, it turned into things like that. I mean, my family, I think, is German, but it's not like we marched around and going, okay, we're going to eat sour. Well, we like sauerkraut. I'm going to say, not like we marched around eating sauerkraut. We did, but you know what I'm saying. It wasn't like we grabbed this huge identity and said, this is what we are and we're nothing else. And it's like, come on. So, and I think on top of that, like for me, my mother was adopted and so was my father. So I actually don't know 100% what I am. So that's never, again, been an identity crisis for me. It's just been an open door, which made it nice for me to look at something and go, oh, that's pretty cool. Let me explore that some more. Let me see what that's all about. So, I've enjoyed that part, or at least having that kind of mentality. So I like watching when other people are really demonstrating culture and showing things. It's just like it's a whole. I'd rather do that than watch TV. So it's like it's just I don't know. It's my form of mental stimulation is learning all these things, especially from cultures that I didn't know about and had never been exposed to before. It's great because you learn all kinds of cool things. And if you're smart, you actually see, oh boy, there's a lot of similarities. And you start finding, okay, everybody's got the same thing. Everyone's got the kooky uncle over here, and everyone's got the crazy auntie here, and one member of the family is kind of a screw up, and it's like, okay, but he's doing his best, and then you got dad who's just like had enough of this shit, here and whatever. It's like, yeah, we've all got the same characters. So it's like, maybe people aren't so different.
Agreed. Yes. Um, and just, also to speak to your experience too, just like diving similar, like trying to figure out where we're from, right? And I think anybody, no matter what your ethnic, cultural, racial background is, um, we all come from a story of survival.
And this concludes the abbreviated version of the podcast. Please consider supporting the program by going to www.patreon.com/MALMAG and subscribing to the show. You can also purchase this individual episode or any individual episode at our Gumroad page. That's malmag.gumroad.com. Thank you for listening to this episode with KRISTEN Cabildo. Coming up next week, I go again to St. Louis and I talk with martial artist Sean Snow. Our Malmag online store at martialartslifestylemagazine.com has a full selection of Timmy B's brand sticks for FMA and Krabiker Bong. Timmy B's brand now selling in Japan as well. Beautiful Timmy B's brand shirts and Dos Manos shirts are available with new t-shirt designs and more products coming soon. An online course in the Dos Manos method for FMA is available under the Courses tab. More courses coming soon. Check out the Places to Train tab to find schools near you, and click on the events calendar page to see what seminars and events are happening all around the world. And of course, visit our main page for articles on the martial arts. Music by Jackal Relic. Martial Arts Lifestyle Magazine and the Martial Arts Lifestyle Podcast are trademarked and copyrighted by TNT LLC.